He's the man behind some of the most iconic, enigmatic, and downright fascinating characters in film and television. From solving supernatural mysteries in Twin Peaks to ruling over the sands of Arrakis and Dune, please welcome podcaster, winemaker, and Golden Globe winner actor Kyle MacLachlan to the South by Southwest studio. Thank you so much for joining me.
That was a lovely introduction, Reece. Thank you.
A bit of a tongue twister, actually.
Not bad. I don't know what time you got up this morning to get here, but I'm sure it was early.
4:45.
Okay, there you go. Well done.
Thank you. Well, actually, one thing I wanted to start with, I was doing my research into you. I'm very familiar with your work, but what I didn't know was that you had started as a classically trained theater actor.
Yes.
So I was like, my girlfriend's currently in a play, and I'm slowly learning, like, the machinations of learning all the lines and trying to recite them night after night. And I was curious if you think that actors should at some point go to the stage.
They don't have to, but it is a wonderful medium to work in. I started on stage and then came to film and television. But it's a really great training ground. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you one of the key things about acting for me, which is being able to talk and listen, like genuinely talk and listen with the other actor, which is so important. And you also get the chance to be able, in front of an audience, there's a massive amount of control that comes with that. I know it doesn't seem like it, but because when I work, I'm very aware of, some people talk about the fourth wall, they don't think beyond that, but I like to think of the fourth wall as the back of the theater. So the audience is all part of this journey. So I'm very conscious of what's happening out there at the same time that I'm, interacting with the other actor.
Interesting, okay. Because people always, it's acting is reacting. I'm trying to understand the mind of an actor, which is quite tough. It truly eludes me because I don't really understand it. Like I'm reading a book called Directing Actors.
Okay.
Which I'm
is
trying.
This something you're interested in?
Oh yeah, I'd love to direct.
Okay, yeah,
but I was curious if there's tips for, I guess, actors, but also for directors that you might have about notes maybe to give and to not give, and
yes, I think the most fun I've had working with directors, and David Lynch, of course, is the one that I worked with the most and who I absolutely adored, was really setting the space to be as creative as possible, which is so the environment is very joyful, it's full of potential, and then if the director knows what they want, that's really important, and if they can impart that to the actor in the shortest amount of time possible. So the most brief, concise way to explain exactly what they're going for is very helpful because the actor needs time to absorb.
Like digest it.
Exactly.
Those notes. Gotcha.
Yeah, but not too much time because then you don't want to think about it too much. You just want it to be and David Lynch was great because he would direct with words that were unusual, like I talked about more wind, this is like a mystery, Elvis, different words that meant different things to him, but they created a feeling more than they were, turn right and say the line like this, blah, blah, blah.
No, he wanted you to catch an essence.
Catch an essence is a really good, see, you're already on your way.
There we go.
You're on your way.
Well, I actually wanted to discuss, he's one of my favorite filmmakers ever, and funny enough, one of my favorite pairings. Like, there's genuinely, it's like you have Scorsese, DiCaprio, you have John Carpenter, Kurt Russell,
yes,
and then you have Lynch and you as genuinely some of the best pairings. And I was curious, was it his direction or was it just him as a person that made that pairing so magical? Because it feels palpable.
Thank you. Him as a person. We met. They sent a tape in, an audition tape that I had. David saw it. I flew to LA, I met he and Rafaela De Laurentiis, and in that first meeting, we didn't talk about Dune at all. We talked about growing up in the Pacific Northwest, different communities. He spent some time in Spokane, my mom was from Spokane, so we just talked about things that we had in common. We shared our love of red wine in the course of the conversation, and at the end of 20 minutes, he handed me the script to Dune and said, hey, I want you to learn some scenes from here and come back and do a screen test. And I was like, okay, I'd never done a screen test, I had never read a film script before, I was like, sure, of course, that's what I'll do.
Let me just play the largest protagonist in literary history.
It happened to be, and still remains, my favorite book of all time, and I was so familiar, I'd read it maybe a dozen times on my own before I even having the meeting, just because I loved the book so much. So that was sort of kismet. But I think really it came down to the personality. I mean, David, he was such a kind, such a joyful person, and so smart and so specific and so unusual. And somehow we just bonded. And the fact that he believed in me, as an actor, that's a huge thing, and gave me the confidence, particularly in that first screen test, which is a whole nother story, because there were ups and downs. But he really carried me through, and I was in love with him from the very beginning.
Gotcha. Well, I feel like it tends to surprise people that you had done Dune, Blue Velvet, all that before Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Which is insane to me because I feel like people have rewritten history to be like, well, of course, that's what you started in Twin Peaks, and then it goes from there. I was kind of curious if you think for people like, there's been such an outpouring of people just talking about how much they love him, his work.
Yeah.
If there's any place to start. I mean, obviously you could start with something like Eraserhead, but I was curious if you think that there's one totemic work that'll really introduce someone to him.
Wow. I mean, Blue Velvet is pretty special. I mean, in Mulholland Drive, of course, but for some reason...
That was my first
Yeah.
with him, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know film could do this.
Yeah. I think Blue Velvet, because I think Eraserhead is a very particular vision, almost a nightmarish vision, and you can obviously distill so much of his later imagery from Eraserhead. Elephant Man,
Beautiful film.
again, a beautiful film, personal in a different way to him, but the story in Blue Velvet is pure David, the detective story, a genre that he loved, and then populated by such unusual characters, and then Jeffrey as kind of the eyes of the audience going through this. And I think that structure is really David. I mean, that's really a pure form. And we were, the filming of that, we were on a little film company in Wilmington shooting. It was a Dino De Laurentiis production. Dino was
so
never
crazy
around.
You just casually
we were
mentioned
off
Dino
on
De
our,
La- yeah.
Yeah, no, we were off on our own. No one was bothering us. We were just having kind of a fun time. Isabella and Laura Dern, Dennis, Dean Stockwell, avoiding a hurricane that came through. It was just like a fun little shoot. Now, this is my second movie. So my first movie is this giant machine that is Dune. The second one is this much more intimate, and I think we all felt more comfortable. It was a family, really, and the tough sequences in there, but there was a lot of humor, a lot of laughter, a lot of fun, which I think you need to counter some of the darkness and the heaviness that, of course, is in that film, particularly the scenes between Dennis Hopper and Isabella Rossellini. Those were difficult days, but I mean, it was intense, but we also had a great time.
Yeah, it reads in the film.
Good.
I think that's a really good choice. I never know when people ask me where to start.
Yeah.
I always say Mulholland because I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Another really excellent. Yeah, I mean that's another great start. I think those two.
Yeah.
To me, jump
or you
out.
just go headfirst into Twin Peaks.
You could do that too. The pilot of Twin Peaks, I think,
A perfect pilot.
is a perfect pilot. Yeah. There's nothing. I'm trying to think. There's nothing I'm more proud of. I don't think. That still sort of stands above all the rest. I mean, there's a lot of things I've done that I really think, oh, that's pretty good. Some I'm like, that's not so good. But but of all the ones I've done that I think are good, I think Twin Peaks
Hindsight
pilot.
bias, 2020.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious. You've been acting now for over 40 years,
Thank
and
you
that's
so
just in
much.
like film, TV.
I feel it, and I feel it. I've been out. It is kind of a remarkable thing to think about, that I'm still doing this and still here, but I do love it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd still like to do, or anything that you
I
haven't
just wanna
tried yet?
Keep doing it. Yeah, I just love. I can't tell you why, but I love the puzzle. I love making the puzzle of the character and all the different pieces and finding all the different elements. And I don't know why. There's nothing in my past that would sort of say, oh yeah, he's going to be an actor. My mom, I think, saw it, and she kind of encouraged me. Let's take some singing lessons. But I don't think it was a master plan. I just think that she saw that I had an ability that way, which I did not see. But I said, okay, I just kind of went on this road. And when I was in high school and college, I realized, oh, actually, I think I'm better at this than I am at anything else that I've ever tried. So maybe I should stay in this category for a while and see what happens.
Gotcha.
And
Well,
so far so good.
yeah, and you also just don't stick to acting. I learned about your passion for wine.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
kind of curious how you balance the two, and also how you're able to, I guess, like delineate what is a job versus what is fun, and kind of the blending of the two. Because I feel like with film, so often actors, filmmakers, everything like that go into it for the love of it, But then there's also the business and everything.
Yeah, there is the business side, but I love it, and I love the people that I'm in both arenas, both the wine world and both the acting world. The people are what make it work. They're the best, and so it's the joy that you get from collaboration, conversations about what you're doing, and in terms of the acting, it's. I mean, I love it. I love getting to set. I love the creative process that happens in front of the camera. That to me is, someone was asking me, what's your happy spot? And I said, I love being in front of the camera. I love the moment between action and cut. That's his magic. And he said, that's exactly what I hate. He said, I do not want to be anywhere near that. And I said, for me, that's where whatever the transformation is happens. And I love it. I don't know why.
Is there any work of yours, like from the action to cut, that did not make it to the final edit that you are the most proud of? The one that stands out that you're like, I can't believe they didn't go with this decision.
It's all different. It's all just, you're throwing out, at least the way I like to work is you're interpreting, and each time that you do it should be slightly different. It's sort of the same thing you strive for doing a play in front of an audience. Every night should have some subtle differences. You have to shift, otherwise
it's not a robot.
It's not a robot.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's the joy of the process. And what makes it into the final edit is that's the editor's job. You make 3 films, right? So there's a film you write, there's a film you shoot, there's a film you edit. So we're doing the film that you act. You know what I mean? So, but not everything is going to make it in there. Not everything tells the story or helps to tell the story. So you need the editor to come in and say, okay, this helps move the story forward. This is a nice moment, but it's not helping the story. So it should always be about the story, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I like when people aren't too precious about it. And they're like, no, we need to consolidate.
Yeah.
I was curious because of the fact that you started in the 80s, and my first set that I was ever on was digital. People wearing face masks because it was COVID, and I was kind of curious, what you've noticed have been the biggest differences, whether it is just technology or if it's different performances, the way that younger actors act now.
Well, I have worked with a number of younger actors too, and so very impressed with their confidence and the ease and the non-judgmental nature that they have about the piece or the character or whatever they're doing. They embrace the process, which I really love. And I think in terms of technically, we're shooting Fallout on film, which is another rhythm. Yeah, so there's a rhythm of the clapper loader. The focus pullers change, so he's usually off and it's a digital thing, so he's not next to the camera as much. So some of the structure has changed, but it's very similar. Different lighting now. We have panel lights. We have panel lights working in here. Those are great. Those are really helpful. Less heat and everything. But I do miss the giant arc lights. You know what I mean? That they had to fire up, and you hear the sound, and they're blazing hot.
Yeah.
It
was
a little more
striking,
visceral,
and then,
and
you get flashbanged.
Yes, and so that's changed, and it moves quicker because of it. Everything moves quicker, but it's remarkably similar, the same. It hasn't changed that much.
Okay. Yeah. You've played so many iconic characters over the years. I was curious if there's one that you're most excited when people bring up. Because I'm sure people bring up Twin Peaks quite a lot, but I was curious.
That's a favorite,
that's a favorite of mine too. But I was curious if there's one that's ever a deep cut where you really appreciate someone bringing up a work that you're super proud of. The Hidden Rocks.
Yeah, The Hidden is a really good choice. It's very 80s. I watched it recently and I was like, oh, I forgot how 80s this is.
No, but it plays so well.
It does. Yeah. It really does. And there's some really good stuff. And the relationship I have with Michael Nuri, my co-star, is so great. He was a good sport. That's a really fun one. I did a movie called The Trial. We shot in Prague in the early 90s. And it's an okay film. It's a little somber, but it was. Harold Pinter adapted the screenplay, and I was like, wow, that's pretty intense, because coming from the theater, of course, Pinter was a god. And that was in Prague. I worked every day, 6-day weeks. It was really grueling. And if people see that, I'm like, oh, wow, you really
You're hitting a deep cut, yeah.
Yeah, deep cut. That one, and I think the Hamlet that I did with Ethan Hawke, where I did Claudius, and Ethan was wonderful as Hamlet. And great cast of characters. But if people have sort of gone into the deep realm, Larry, you know, like, oh, yeah, thank you so much.
They've taken the path slightly less traveled.
They have. They have.
And the last thing I kind of wanted to ask you is, you're someone who is so well read, so obviously cares about acting, about film, everything like that.
Yeah.
I was curious if there's any recommendations you have of something that maybe isn't watched as much that you would like people to watch, even if it's not like on the screen, if it's like a play that you'd like people to read.
Oh, wow.
Just something to broaden their horizons.
I've done, or just something that just whatever.
In general.
Yeah.
Something that stuck with you.
I mean, I talk about Shakespeare, of course, which is difficult to, but there are some plays of Shakespeare that are easier to sort of follow the story. Romeo and Juliet, for example, that's a pretty straightforward one. The language is so beautiful. It's hard. Shakespeare is not meant to be read as much as it's meant to be heard and seen. So that's probably not a very good example. Let's see. What would be some good?
Mine would be The Hidden. I think everyone should watch that.
I think that's a really good choice. The Hidden is a good choice. And if you grew up watching the Flintstones, actually the Flintstones is a decent movie.
Flintstones? Some amazing practical stuff going on in there.
Oh my God, coming to set every day was so much fun because they always had new stuff. It's like, you're reading the paper. You're not reading the paper. You're reading this, stone tablet. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
That's gotta be so much fun.
It was fun. It was really fun. There you go.
Check out the Flintstones.
Flintstones. That's what I have to recommend. Flintstones.
No, views are gonna go up. Letterbox reviews going up. It's gonna be wonderful.
It was a fun one.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This is genuinely such a pleasure.
Thanks, Reece.
Huge fan of your work.
Thank you.
Can't wait for season 2 of Fallout.
Thank you.
And hopefully more podcasts from you.
Yes, we've got something coming. We've got something up our sleeve.
Excellent.
So
and if I ever get into wine, I know who to turn to.
Okay, call me and I'll set you straight. And good luck on your career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Well,
we need you directing.
I'm gonna have to work on my vocabulary. I'll get some better, more flowery words in there.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Inspirational.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Reece Feldman, and this is the South by Southwest studio.
There you go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
What a pleasure.
Truly, it's such a pleasure. Love watching you work.